Welcome to Books, Books, Books. Books, Books, Books is new to YouTube, and this is a showcase channel where authors can send a copy of their book for a book review. A couple of times a week we will try to get a book, not just any random book off a shelf someplace, but we'd like to get a copy of your book to read it and do a review of the book, let people know what the book is about. Not so much as a critical critique of what your writing is, but mostly just informational as to what the book is about, who the author is, where the book can be found. We might read a couple of excerpts from different chapters in the book just so that people have an idea of what the type of storyline you have written in your book. And we'll put the review up a couple times a week. It's basically free advertising for you, and it allows you a chance to showcase your writing. And Books, Books, Books is also on Facebook, so any videos that are going to be shown here on YouTube will also be linked to Facebook on Books, Books, Books. So you might want to look there for anything. But the only way for your book to get seen very well is if our channel grows. And the faster it grows, the bigger it grows, the better chances for free advertising for you and your review to be seen by others. So one thing that we all like to see is for you to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. The more subscribers we have, we'll be able to send out notification to you. The more people will be able to see your book that we're going to review. You'll have an opportunity to see other people's reviews, and that might spark some interest and ideas in your next writing, so that you can see what their storyline's about. It might trigger your thinking, that might be something I might want to look into, or I've been thinking about that. That's an interesting way of talking about that particular subject. Can never have enough reviews about books. Books is information, information is life. That's what life is all about. We love to explore the world that we live in. We love to explore worlds that we don't live in with the science fiction theories, all the different types of genre of books that are out there. Don't have to be 100% factual. They can be any type of book that you want to send us. It could be a manual that you want to send to us. That's fine too. We're going to put it on here on YouTube and Facebook, and it'll be a little bit of free advertising for yourself. And so if you want to send a copy of your book and your own written review as to some of the topics, key points that you would like us to point out while we're doing the review, send it to this address right here. Going to post the address right here, and we'll also put a link to the address down below so that you can see it down below as well. So feel free to send us your books. That'd be awesome. To Books, Books, Books. Make sure not only do you hit the bell, make sure that you don't only hit the subscribe button, but just as importantly, hit the share button. Share Books, Books, Books from YouTube and Facebook. Share that with everybody that you know. The more people that know about it, the more they have the opportunity to send in a copy of their book or to see other people's reviews of books that they've written. A lot of readers out there want to see what's coming up, want to see what's out there, and sometimes it's a little hard to kind of scroll through all the different publishing companies and see what a book is about. Sometimes if you get a free review to see it, maybe you've put a free review in your local newspaper or at your local radio station. This is worldwide. Let's expand your review so everybody in the world can see what you're about, and then they can look in to see what other books you've written. So Books, Books, Books. What we're going to do today, one of the things we would like to do is, like I stated, read some excerpts from different pages of the books, and we don't want people to be ultra critical. Feel free to write comments down below if you like it, or if it's not your thing, or write maybe some constructive criticism if you think that maybe the author lost you for some reason, or strayed off course, or you weren't able to understand the concept. Feel free to write some constructive criticism, but don't be ultra critical. I don't care if you've written 10 bestseller books a year for the last 20 years, and you're the authority on writing, professor from Highfalutin University, whatever. Let's not be ultra critical of people. Let's be encouraging, and feel free to write comments, but let it be constructive criticism and encouraging criticism, and give them maybe, good ideas on how you may have done something, or how you're doing something in your own books similar to theirs. That may give them an idea on how to do their book better. Today's first book we're going to look at, on the very first book for this channel, is going to be the book 2184, written by W. James Rapp. It's a science fiction book. Takes place in the year 2184, as you can guess. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if you can see it here, but all this on this side and this side is binary code, and Morse code and binary code. It's kind of interesting. You might want to look at that, see if it says anything in there. I'm not sure if that says something of the story in there or not, but check it out. This particular book is, as I stated, a science fiction book written by author W. James Rapp, and it is on Amazon. Now, this particular book I've already read, and I will read some excerpts to you here in a minute. It's the writer's first book. It's not the best of writing. The storyline's really interesting, really captivating in my opinion. The language is okay. Any kid, junior high school kid, adult can read it and understand it. There's a lot of technological information in there. Interestingly, for the year 2184, all the technology that's in this book, I've done a little research, not a whole lot, just a little tiny bit. All the research is in existence today, so it's not super futuristic, but the concept of the storyline does take you into a different world in our future. Now, anyone's future, the future of the world is anyone's guess. Our futures can go in a million different paths. This is a particular path that the author decided to take us down, a journey down this particular path in the storyline, to see how the future might pan out if certain things went into play in this storyline. So it's kind of an interesting book. It's a very easy read. It's only 434 and a half pages long, so it's not, and it's spaced, typed well. So it's not a hard read. It's a pretty quick read. The author has also written, W. James Rapp has also written 2 other books, short story books, very, very short story books. Those 2 books are part of a series. The series isn't complete yet, as I understand it. He doesn't know exactly how many more books, 1 or 2 more books, probably 2 more books, I think he said, that he was going to write to complete that little mini series. And those, it doesn't take place with this storyline. It's a complete different storyline, and also very interesting, very easy to read, something you might want to look into as well. So hit that bell, hit that subscribe button, and just as importantly as everything else, share this channel with everybody so that we can grow, so that we can get your information out there, so people can see your showcase of your book, your storyline. And if you've written a bunch of books, send them to us. I would suggest sending them one at a time in case we get an influx of books. We are going to take books by order, not necessarily by what book I like, or if it's a big thick book, I'm going to put it this, no, I'm not going to put it aside. We're going to dig into it. So we're going to go one at a time. But if you have a dozen books, don't send a dozen books and think all dozen of your books are going to be one at a time in front of everybody else's, unless we don't have a whole lot of subscribers yet. Early bird gets the worm, so if you get in on the ground floor before everybody else gets a chance, you might want to do that. So go ahead and send it to that address, but share this address on YouTube and the Facebook address. Share it with all your friends and family and everybody that you can think of, so that the word can get out there, so that more people can see your review and see other people's reviews and have the opportunity to see what books are out there without having to go to trying to figure things out themselves when they're reading the books. Now we're going to read little excerpts from it. I'm going to read the whole book. I have some other people that will also from time to time be on here and do a book review, so feel free to, it's not just going to always be me, it's going to be other people in the crew as well. So let's get started and take a look at our first book, 2184, science fiction, written by W. James Rapp. So today's book is going to be the book 2184, A New Beginning. And I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from it. I'm not going to read the whole book by any stretch of the imagination, and please bear with me with my low-level reading skills, but we're going to read a little bit from it today. Just kind of give you a general idea to get started on the book, on what the book is about, and then we'll kind of discuss it here in a minute. 2184, A New Beginning, Chapter 1. I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but I'm just going to read first 2 pages here and then a couple of other pages. Okay? So just bear with me. Chapter 1. It was a clear, crisp day when Emmanuel left for his day's duty of productivity. By midday, the skies remained clear. The temperature was cool but very pleasant. During his noonday break, Emmanuel took a walk along the lakeshore to stretch his legs and to take a moment to relax. And today was no different than any other day, as the weather was perfect. Emmanuel usually took a walk along the lake shore by the water's edge, which wasn't too far from the laboratory where his office was. When Emmanuel would take his walk along the shore in the clean air, he simply 2184, A New Beginning. That's today's book that we're going to review. Just going to read a few excerpts from it. Not going to read the whole book, not going to read an entire chapter, just going to read a few pages here and there, just to kind of give you a feel of the book, and we'll discuss it here in a minute. Chapter 1. It was a clear, crisp day when Emmanuel left for his day's duty of productivity. By midday, the skies remained clear. The temperature was cool but very pleasant. During his noonday break, Emmanuel often took a walk along the lake shore to stretch his legs and to take a moment to relax. And today was no different, as the weather was perfect. Emmanuel usually took his walk along the lake shore by the water's edge, which wasn't too far from the laboratory where his office was. When Emmanuel would take his walk along the shore in the clean air, he seemed to feel less restless and a sense of peace. He wasn't sure why he felt restless or why he needed to feel a sense of peace, because he lived a perfectly normal life. He had daily duties where he was a productive member of the order in the administration of agriculture. He communicated with his colleagues regularly and discussed issues in their common role in productivity. But restless is what Emmanuel felt. He could not put his finger on why he felt restless, and it was not a sense that overwhelmed him, but he often felt compelled to go to the lake shore. It was his place of solitude and where he could actually feel alone, to take time to relax and contemplate his position in life. Just coming here to the lake gave him a sense of peace and freedom. Typically at midpoint of his midday walk, Emmanuel liked to stop along the shore and sit on the seawall to relax, breathe in the fresh air. He wasn't sure who built the seawall. As far as he could remember, it was always there. There was no information about the builders on the net. Emmanuel assumed it was built before the end times by others. The net did not provide much information about the time before the end times or about the people who lived in that time. From what he knew or what he had been told, all humans were killed in a great catastrophe. Today, there were no true humans left, only people like him, transhumans. That was the first 2 pages in the first chapter. So already it's kind of laying the foundation that this is a different time period. Obviously the date 2184 shows that it's a different time period, but it's also a divided time period. It's the time after the end times, according to his reading here. So that kind of gives you a moment of pause, something to think about, that it's obviously a different time period. And not only is it a different time period, but he's different because he is transhuman, or at least in part. If you read the rest of the book, he's not fully transhuman, but he's in part transhuman. So he's a class of transhuman, and as he stated, there are no natural humans left in existence. So the whole period that he lives in is already shaping up to be quite different than what we live in today. So real quick, let me take this excerpt here. Through this beginning part of the book, through this particular part of the book, this first chapter, on his way back to work, he finds a box, and in the box contained several books. He didn't even know what books were, because they don't have books in his time period. Everything is on the internet or the net, and everything can be immediately downloaded from the net to their brain. So there's really no need to have actual hard copies of books. And he also explains that there aren't very many transhumans, so they would have no need for mass publication. So let me continue on here. So after he figures out what he had found this box that had some books in it, after he queries it on the net to figure out that they are in fact books, while he's looking them over, let me pick up from here on page 15. I believe this is still chapter 1. Emmanuel Rubinstein, a voice in his head rang out. Yes, Emmanuel answered, recognizing the voice as being that of Sophie, the iconic entity of the artificially intelligent advanced quantum computer system, also known as the Ziggurat, or simply known as the Zig. Emmanuel Rubinstein, what is in your possession? Emmanuel looked up and away from the box and pages he was holding in his hand. He tucked the book into his pocket. Emmanuel replied, still looking away from the box, I have a box with some very old items in it. I think they're called books. Yes, Emmanuel, you are in danger. The container you have may be carrying pathogens or viruses that you have not been cured of, and it may corrupt your systems. A virus? Emmanuel replied. Emmanuel has heard of catching a virus. The Zig utilizes peripheral AI systems to keep today's citizens up to date on information and news, as well as propaganda to ensure compliance to the efforts of the New World Order. So again, here we're talking the end times, and he's living in a time after the end times, and it's also talking about a New World Order and the type of humanity that lives in it. So let me skip on ahead here. This is chapter 2, the beginning of chapter 2. and this is somewhat of a continuation of the storyline as to him finding the books. So let me quickly read a little bit from here. Chapter 2. "Emmanuel, what are you doing?" the voice asked. "I was just looking at this," Emmanuel replied. "Put the book back into the box, Emmanuel. It may be dangerous for you to see the contents." Emmanuel tossed the book back into the box. Just as the book fell back into the box, the officials arrived at the location, and much faster than he had imagined. 6 officials quickly approached the area. 2 of the officials approached him. Each official stood equally in height of 2.1336 meters, clad in all black uniforms, black helmets, black boots, black gloves, black exo-armor. These officials looked stout, more sturdy than Emmanuel normally saw. The officials were all the same exact height and apparent in weight. Regardless of their skin color or the shape of their eyes, they otherwise all looked very similar, almost identical. With their unique capabilities, they were obviously made of the Class 5s. Emmanuel was only a Class 1 and would not have knowledge of structure and capabilities of these officials or their official functions. What Emmanuel did not particularly know was that compared to the other humans of today's generation, these men, transhuman men, carried all the selected traits and technologies specific to their purpose. Many decades ago, these officials would have been considered science fiction, impossibilities known as cyborgs. However, in this era, transhumanism was more common than from before the end times. Today's transhumans are in fact the only type of human that exists in the world in one form or another. There are no natural humans in existence anymore, he thought to himself. Of course, Class 1s were the closest thing to what a human once was. Even he was a former transhuman. All Class 1s and above were created by selective genetics and are embedded with nanotechnologies which allow them to access the net. Class 1s only have limited access to the net. What Emmanuel did not specifically know was that 2 officials that spoke to Emmanuel were Class 5 superclass transhumans called Archon. So again, here we are talking about the different time period, and the book is laying out the foundation of what kind of world that Emmanuel lives in. Now, Emmanuel lives, according to the storyline, he lives with another person called Hope. Of course, Hope is a female, and they live in a flat. They share a flat together. They don't live intimately. They just cohabitate as a pair, per se, that the government has set them up with, I guess. Now, Hope works for the Department of Intelligence, and she has information and access to different levels of the net, different levels of the ziggurat, and she even has access to a different type of system that he's completely unaware of called the Tesseract. And according to the storyline, he was very hesitant to let her know what he had found, because even speaking of the information, he was told not to speak to anybody about the information that he found. So he was very hesitant because he knows anything he says can always be heard by the government. Anything he sees with his own eyeballs, as he is part transhuman, can be seen by the government. Unless he has his eyes shut, they can't see anything, but of course he can't see anything either. So real quickly, let me read over this. Hope and Emmanuel, it's late in the evening, and Hope and Emmanuel are discussing some of the items that he found and the different books that he found. The different books are of different ages and different types. I believe there was a book of the Bible, couple of Hindu books, story books such as the book 1984 written by George Orwell is also found in the book, in the box that he had found that the government came and took from him. So here she knows all about this. He was afraid to mention it to her, but the conversation comes up, and so they discuss things. And it stirs his imagination because it's the books come from a whole different part of an era that he knows absolutely nothing about. And for good reason as far as the government is concerned. The government really is part of the ziggurat, artificial intelligence that basically rule the world in one form or another. So here they're talking about the books. And Hope is speaking here. There are many different religions over the history of time by many races and regions of people. Only a small few ever lasted through the millennia, as did Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. I read these books in the Bible tonight, not for your full understanding today, but as a starting point to enlighten your mind. I also want to continue to read some of the other books as well as give you explanations, because as I stated earlier, only in the end you will have a better understanding with whom you are and why you are here. But for now, you must get back to sleep, as you have just over 2 more hours before you must wake up and prepare yourself for the day. Emmanuel thought for a different angle of approach on his question. He waited for the silence of the room to collect his thoughts. Finally, he stated, "All things were created from the Big Bang and cultivated through evolution." "Emmanuel," Hope replied, "I'm amazed that you of all beings are thinking only 3-dimensionally. Perhaps you have fallen victim to our own oligarchical system." Pardon me for stumbling on that. "It appears that you cannot think independently of technology, and you have been taught to fear that the notion of thinking on your own. Must you constantly search the net for every answer to be fed to you?" Emmanuel looked at Hope with puzzlement. People today are not used to such adversarial comments. Hope looked at Emmanuel for an answer, or at least a spark of an answer. In the times before the end times, people studied, read books, and learned to add to their intelligence. Today, information is dictated to the people through the net. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Emmanuel looked at Hope with a dazed confusion and expression. He really had no idea what she was talking about, and he only hoped that in time her message would start to click in his own mind. "Emmanuel," Hope continued, "some say all matter from the beginning of time to the end of time came from the Big Bang. Everything that ever existed or will exist currently exists in one form or another. Additionally, they say that there is an intelligent design to it all, and nothing comes by random circumstances." Hope paused for a moment in contemplation, then stated, "Emmanuel, I know I have rambled on and on tonight about... Hope paused for a moment in contemplation, then stated, "Emmanuel, I know I have rambled on and on tonight, and I know you must be very tired. When one gets tired, skepticism becomes more pronounced. Before I let you return to sleep for the night, let me give you one additional thing to think about over time. I do not want to debate this, but I just want to throw this out there for fun to give you something to think about. This is a fun concept which lends to the postulation that creation was not simply accidental or coincidental, but this lends to the explanation that creation was of divine intervention. And I will try to explain this mathematically. Let me give you this to contemplate. So he has about 2 hours sleep. He's been given a lot of information that is completely new to him. He doesn't know anything about the times before the end times, and now has read several of the books to him, and trying to explain to him what the book's meanings were and what people thought back in those days and how they thought and how they lived. So it's really an eye-opener, because in this world that Emmanuel lives in today is completely different. So before the end times, there was a philosopher who used this analogy. I actually do not recall who once stated this, and that in of itself is disturbing to me, but anywho. Have you ever heard of a child's toy called a Rubik's Cube? Emmanuel thought for a moment, then replied, no, I've never heard of a toy. Before you go to sleep, think of this, Hope stated with a smile. A scientist who lived before the end days stated this: a Rubik's Cube is a children's toy. A toy was a device made for amusement and entertainment. The original form of a Rubik's Cube was usually made of polymer plastic that was a square of about 10.14 centimeters. It had 6 sides, a square. Each side was a different color, and each side was split into 9 individual blocks. Each row of blocks can be rotated horizontally or vertically. The object of the toy was to have someone scramble the colors for you to twist each row and each column several times until all the colors of the sides were scrambled. Then it was the challenge for you to place all of the colors back into their respective sides with no one single color out of place on any side. A trained person who knew the sequencing could complete the Rubik's Cube in less than a minute. Now, of course, a Rubik's Cube as a child's toy is far less complicated than any living thing on Earth or anything in the universe. As you know, the Earth in of itself is approximately 4.5 to 5 billion years old. And as you know, the universe, as far as we can see it, and everything in it, is approximately 14 billion years old. At the time of the end times, earthly population was approximately 15.1 billion people. Since the beginning of human existence, there have been approximately 130 billion people to have ever lived. Less than 0.5% are currently living today, but of course in transhuman form. Before the end times, it was estimated that an average of 335,000 babies were born each day around the world. The crude birth rate was 20.9 births per 1,000 population, or 103 births globally per minute, or 5.3 births every second. If you gave a random blind person the cube who had never seen nor used the Rubik's Cube before, and took them back to the beginning of time and asked them to solve it and allowed them to make a move every second, how long do you think it would take for them to solve? Emmanuel shook his head, unable to calculate such a problem in his own mind so quickly. I don't know, he stated. Tell me, however, what is a blind person? What does that mean? Hope smiled. Yes, you have never heard or seen of a blind person, since all transhumans today are genetically designed to perfection. Before the end times, some people may have had natural deformities or injuries. Some people had no arms, others had no legs, some could not see, and some could not hear. Those people were few in population, but they did exist. In some extreme cases, some people could not see or hear, or some people had no arms and no legs, and may also have been unable to see. Excuse me for just a second. A person who could not see, whether they were born that way or encountered an accident rendered them sightless. They were called blind. Of course, those type of people were not the norm, but they did exist. Emmanuel's eyes widened in brief contemplation of such a notion. I had no idea. And they were not terminated, Emmanuel replied. Hope stated, I understand. It was not until the trailing end of times when the humans were systematically terminated for a lack of want. Today, people are the result of genetic engineering, and transhumans are brought up in a different way. The chance of a person becoming injured today are far less likely than in our past. Hope paused, then continued with the story. Now there are 43 quintillion possible states in the cube. In 13.8 billion years for a blind person to complete the cube, there would be less than a 1% chance in solving the cube randomly. To solve the cube without any mistakes, it would take 1.4 trillion years to solve. It would therefore simply and actually take hundreds of billions upon billions of years longer than the current existence of the universe to solve the very simple and non-complex Rubik's Cube toy by random chance. If you were to ask a scientist how many years would it take to randomly create humankind, they would say the Earth is around 4.5 billion years old, so therefore it would take 4.5 billion years. What scientists do not say is the probability to repeat the so-called random act consistently over 130 billion times the number of people that have ever lived in existence, as well as every other living thing and organism on Earth, let alone everything in the universe, is simply inconceivable, incalculable, and mathematically impossible to have happened by chance. The human body alone is made up of over 100 trillion cells. The Rubik's Cube had only 54 squares to be properly aligned. Scientists before the end time surmised there had to be an intervention that guided the process in order to create everything in the time frame we live in, let alone to consistently repeat the process of randomly creating a child at 5.3 times per second every second of the day. It was then and is now inconceivably incalculable and impossibly random. Humanity, on the other hand, believes that they are smarter than all of existence, and that they are in no way connected to any higher dimension without ever putting forth a counter and accurate hypothesis. They would simply state those facts to be false. It goes on a little bit further here. Of course, that was just one little excerpt, and I believe that was in chapter 6. Yes, that was in chapter 6. So again, the book is 2184, A New Beginning. It is written by the author William James Rapp, or W. James Rapp, as it states on the book, and it is available at Amazon. And W. James Rapp has also published 2 other books, short story books, in a series. The short stories are a series. He hasn't finished the other series, to my understanding. So keep an eye out for those books also coming out on Amazon. And please send us a copy of your book so we can do a review. We can discuss this further. We can go over a little bit more information. and that's what we'll do here in just a moment. So one thing I would like for anybody to do is post their comments at the bottom, but keep your comments constructive. It's a very difficult thing for anybody to write a book, to come up with concepts, to come up with characters, to write it down into a storyline. So just be respectful of other people. Keep your comments constructive and not ultra critical. Nobody's perfect, and everybody's style is different. You know, different people like to read different types of books, even if they aren't ultra critical. Some people like reading comic books, less critical, very quick. Also, Books is also on Facebook, and a copy of this video would be linked to Facebook. And if you bring us a copy of your book, it will also be posted on Facebook along with the video. So free advertisement for you if you